Hello to all of you who are just joining us today, and welcome to today's Totara community webinar. So today we're really lucky as well because we're going to be joined by Totara's Chief Learning Officer, Lars Hyland. And during the webinar today, as you are doing already, please feel free to ask questions in the chat here or in the Q&A. You can ask any questions you like, and we may group the questions together if they're around a similar topic, and we'll ask those at the same time so that we can help to answer those. If you're watching this recording on YouTube, for example, you can come and watch this in the Totara community as well. And if you do think of questions during the webinar today that you'd like us to continue the conversation with, please feel free to post those questions in the community as well. And Lars or myself can come back and help to answer those questions later as well. So as we enter 2022, we're entering a sort of new normal potentially for workplace and hybrid learning. And today, Lars is going to help us think about that and how to make sure that your staff feel engaged and potentially, hopefully, happy. So over to you, Lars Hyland.
Thanks, Matt, and thanks everyone for joining us today, whatever time of day it is for you around the world. We live in interesting times, don't we? Simple thing to say. We've all had our own experiences, I think, over the past, well, coming up to a couple of years, which have been quite transformational, really, both personally and professionally. And I guess the key takeaway from today is to have us all reflect that actually things are going to continue changing, and they're going to continue being disruptive and uncertain. And how do we as learning and HR professionals help our colleagues in our companies to handle that and handle that without the extreme anxiety or stress or difficulties that come with that. There are ways in which we can design the workplace experience to be much more effective in supporting people in their roles, both in terms of their skills, both in terms of the culture, the environment in which we operate. And that's often affected by the processes and workflows and the technology that we apply in our organizations. So what I'm going to cover today is to explore this area, because there's many words for it. We can call it employee experience, we can call it talent management, we can call it talent experience, and there are probably different flavors of definition out there. And it'd be good if you want to put in the chat actually what you think your own definition is in your own organization, because I think we're all together trying to determine what is the best way to describe what we're trying to achieve with building a culture that is fit for purpose for this new world of work. Which has no place. It can be anywhere. It can be, it can even be in a virtual space. If we think about the developments of the metaverse that ex-Facebook is looking to develop among other people. So we're rapidly entering a fascinating period of time, I think, where how we interact with each other and collaborate is going to be quite different to what we're used to, particularly those traditions that I guess that we had about coming into offices and working collaboratively together. Now, depending where you are in the world, you'll either be opening up or closing down in terms of lockdowns. But I hope that some of the things we're going to discuss today will resonate across the board, because I think the decisions we make in terms of the technology we're adopting and subsequently the workflows and processes and the learning experiences that we design, all of these need to be resilient. They need to be adaptable to and supporting people no matter where they are in the world and in relation to your own organization's operations, because that is increasingly much more flexible than it's ever been. So what do we need to take into account? Well, we need to recognize that employee experience matters. Now, I think probably most of the people on this webinar will naturally agree, but it's only been, I think, the shock of the pandemic that the leadership teams and those who hold the purse strings in organizations have started to recognize that employee experience is a very strategic issue, and it really affects whether an organization is going to survive or thrive going forward. But this is a long-standing fact, actually, that employee experience matters. It doesn't just matter because it's from the human aspect of things, if you like. It matters also from a business perspective because it's fundamentally good for business. Now, this started back in 2001, I think. This is a case study here of Douglas Conant, who became the CEO of Campbell's Soup organization. And at the time, they were the worst performing food brand in the world, as it turns out. And one manager from Gallup described their employee engagement as basically the worst ever seen among the Fortune 500, which is quite damning, really. Now, Conant, when he came in, he recognized that engagement and motivation was really critical to business performance. I would say that's sort of an obvious thing, but it's actually very challenging to make impact on that. But he did. He engaged a change program. It was designed to build that workplace experience. Now, it took 8 years, and we're talking about the beginning of the millennia, 8 years to achieve this and make a difference, a significant difference, one where their stock and value of the company increased by 30%, and the engagement, that had skyrocketed alongside that. So when you look at the typical employee ratio, or engaged to disengaged employee ratios, which you can measure, a world-class level is 12 people engaged to 1 person disengaged. That's world-class. Campbell's managed to achieve 23 to 1, which is quite an achievement. Now, what this has led to is a recognition that if you do invest in employee experience, then you're highly likely to outperform any of your competitors who don't, essentially. So this diagram here that you can see points to the fact that your average profit per employee can be 4 times that if you do invest in your employee experience. So happy, as Matt put it at the start of the webinar, motivated people who are clear on their goals and are supported in their jobs, i.e. they are feeling skilled and able to apply those skills effectively, will achieve a lot more than those who are feeling unsupported. And we have seen quite almost a polarization, I think, of the past 2 years, where people have really struggled to support their people. And that's largely down to the fact that they haven't had the infrastructures in place. The technology infrastructures is one part of it, but also the cultural infrastructure there. But if you get it right, you can make a very big, significant difference to the bottom line, essentially, in your organization. You will be far more competitive and successful going forward by doing so. So let's step back up the stage a little bit and look at some of these definitions. So historically, how we support our people and our talent. And I'm going to define talent as everybody, not just a select few that maybe you might call in future leadership, say. Now, I appreciate, again, definitions are quite loose, really. It depends on which sector, organization that you or region of the world that you might be in, that you'll get differences here. And it causes us a bit of a challenge, I think, as a sector, actually, to try and give clarity to it. But I'm defining talent management in this way, in that it broadly covers the sort of administrative activities that you need if you're a large scaling business. So recruiting, applicant tracking, performance management, which we'll come back to, compensation and benefits, rewards, skills gap analysis, really critical these days. In fact, that gap is almost a chasm, really. The differences between what your skills are in the organization now and the nature of the job roles and the skills that you're going to need in the future. How do you hold on to people? We're going to talk about that a bit more, because frankly, it's incredibly difficult to hold on to people. There's a huge amount of pressure. Some of it's self-created by having poor work environments and experience at the start, which is leading to people essentially, moving to environments which are far more supportive. And thinking about how you succession plan, career management, and deployment of people across your business to meet project needs or the different needs around your regions and of activity. So it's quite broad, talent management as a definition, but that systematic process is something that we all need to cover. And what we've seen is that the impact of technology in supporting that has evolved significantly over the past decades, really, starting in the 1990s with technology starting to appear, such as the first learning management systems becoming more prevalent, online job services appearing as the internet itself grew in popularity, and essentially a big shift from paper records to digitized databases. Now, spreadsheets emerged, and they're still around, and they're not going to go away, arguably. And there's still portions of the world where paper records probably still reside, but that's increasingly we are living in a fully digitized, data-driven world now, as you see as we move through to the 2000s and onwards. But essentially, the talent technology that now exists is extremely diverse, and the costs of that technology has dramatically fallen, and the sophistication of it is rapidly increasing. We can talk a little bit about the emergence of much more flexible machine learning and AI, and that's impacting areas of recruitment significantly, but it's also impacting skills profiling and your attempts, I guess, to support talent mobility in your organization and addressing that skills chasm. But as we move forward and taking into account the experience of the past couple of years in particular, the emphasis on the human aspect of what it feels like to work at your organization and how you support people, the technology that you use needs to be friction-free. It needs to be comfortable to use, easy to use, and it needs to be actively supporting what people are focused on, getting the job done, essentially. I suspect you can probably point in your own organizations to examples of where that isn't the case, where the technology, you're fighting the technology, your people are frustrated by it, they're not achieving what they need to do. And that just leads to the level of discontentment that is only increasing. And in fact, that discontent, many people are describing it as the great resignation, has really come about because people have had the experience of working more remotely, whether their organization wanted to or not. That extra level of autonomy has allowed people to reflect more on their work practices. So many people have taken the opportunity really to essentially move on elsewhere or just quit. Some sectors have job conditions which are arguably unsustainable now. They need to change quite dramatically because people are just not willing to tolerate those types of working conditions. So just a few stats there on the screen. You may have seen these wherever you are in the world. I'm sure you're feeling it, that basically back early last year, April, 4 million people in the US quit. 46% are planning to move. And there are more recent statistics which prove or point to that 2022 is going to be even more significant in terms of that mobility of talent. So independent of an organization, people are going to move around increasingly. And that cycle of movement is likely to grow unless your organization has invested significantly in its experience so that it's an attractive place to come and work. And information sharing, places like Glassdoor and others are only going to drive that further, especially when you're talking about people with scarce skills. And that skills challenge, as I say, I call it a chasm. The fact that we're going to need over 1 billion people needing to be completely reskilled, and that's an estimate from the World Economic Forum in their Future of Jobs report. That's probably an underestimate estimate as we move forward across the next decade. By 2030, they're estimating 1 billion people. If you think about the challenges that we have in terms of how our economies are working, how our economies are going to get affected by big changes like climate change, that is driving the balance of desirable skills and also accessible skills, and what skills are defined as sort of basic or functional skills. The World Economic Forum has defined these 10 as key skills for pretty much any worker in the workforce over the next decade or so, and that it's emphasizing analytical skills, cognitive working, problem solving, critical thinking, creativity and originality, being able to imaginatively operate in your job and your role, and to be resilient, have higher degrees of stress tolerance and flexibility. So you could sum that up as adaptability, the ability to cope with uncertainty and to respond to change as needed, and to do that collectively as teams. So there's big challenges there, plus also the need to be more abreast of digital skills. This isn't just operating the tools that we have around us, which increasingly get easier to use. It means having a more sophisticated understanding of smarter technology, such as the AI tools and machine learning and data manipulation that we can now do. And those people that have those skills are in high demand, they're highly valued, and we're only going to see that increase unless we can reskill and give more access to that type of skills development across all of our organizations. So alongside that, the employee experience, or the experience that we have at work, is changing. Expectations are changing. I've already alluded to the pandemic as being a huge catalyst in bringing forward what were longer term trends around expectations in the workplace, i.e. more desire to work more flexibly, be more in control of your time, be more focused on achieving objectives with more freedom and more autonomy, to focus in on your strengths and to develop them more further, to have access to people around you who can advise and support and mentor, have a coaching culture really, and to be really focused on a purpose and a set of objectives that you can really take to heart and be motivated by. And that's a real challenge, I think, for organizations, to help define that, to align their company objectives with individuals' desires to develop their careers in areas where they feel some personal alignment with their values. So with that in mind as well, we can see that there's often a bit of a disconnect, and not just a bit of one, probably often a fundamental one, when it comes to the experience that people come into in an organization, especially larger ones where by necessity there's been a sort of a focus on particular tasks and challenges and functions, and the HR function itself grows into multiple teams. So you have a learning and development team, you have people focused on internal comms, you have people focused on understanding how satisfied employees are, performance management, senior leadership initiatives that come in over the top of everyone else's activities and management priorities. All of these elements, I'd be interested to know, in my experience, they often compete with each other rather than actively support any one individual's everyday work. It's probably quite a common scenario where a typical week might be that you have some mandatory regulatory type training that you're being notified on regularly to complete. At the same time, you've got performance conversations that you need to have with your team or your managers. You may be needing to complete a survey. You may need to be pulled sideways onto a project that your manager's demanding that you do. All of these things end up being quite competitive on your attention, and as a result, they often work to the opposite effect to their intent. The intent is obviously to help you, but the intent often falls to the side when in reality it gets in the way of getting your work done. So wouldn't it be good if you could have infrastructure, technology, and workflows and organizational design that does align and does give a much more personalized and sort of adaptive experience for your people, that then therefore is perceived and received as something genuinely supportive of getting work done, and in fact helps them get their work done. It becomes aligned and a congruent experience, as opposed to one that's full of friction and frustration. What that means is thinking about organizational structures differently. So the conventional structure of top-down command and control is still very prevalent. It works in a stable environment. It works less well when things are highly unstable and uncertain. And in fact, what you're really looking to work towards, I think, in this new world of work that we are fully in, is to have a much more open organization that is decentralized in its decision making and forms of collaboration. It's more bottom up rather than top down. So there is much more focus on effective collaboration and being much more flexible as well in your approach. And that can be characterized, and I like to characterize it in musical terms. So think about the difference between a jazz troupe, jazz band, and a classical quintet, say, or orchestra. The orchestra is often, is led by a conductor. They set the score, they guide you through a score, which is pretty fixed. You're not really meant to drift away from the notes. You can bend around the notes and interpret it to some extent, but it's very much you are focused on executing on a set piece of music in this case. But it translates, I think, quite nicely into the equivalent of standard operating procedures for your organization. You are meant to abide by those. Lo and behold, if something appears in your environment which doesn't comply, then you can be stuck. You can be almost paralyzed as an organization. And you can see the history of some organizations that have become extremely paralyzed by the impact of digital technology hitting them, and frankly, their dominant position just disappears. Think of Kodak, think of Nokia, think of a good number of organizations that were inflexible because of their focus on defining everything and not being mindful that things can change rapidly. And right now, things are changing incredibly rapidly. So having a more flexible approach, so that's where the jazz thinking comes in, being able to work together or play together in ways that allows you to interpret and improvise around and free exploration really around what you're trying to achieve. It allows you to respond much more meaningfully to uncertain and new environments, and yet stay coherent, yet stay in alignment with each other. So from a team perspective, that can be very, very powerful in these days. So it's really about enabling that resilience to be built up that I mentioned before, and that you are encouraging people to be open to new ways of working and innovating at all levels. So you can achieve what I think of as distributed authority, your ability to push decision making down to teams and groups so that they can they can really respond to that customer need directly and meaningfully, say, or other changes in local markets, for example. So yeah, have a think about that. I'll be interested to know if any of you, please share in the chat if you've got some thoughts around how your organization is. Do you think it's more jazz or classically oriented, or is it somewhere in between? An interesting fusion. So moving on, we talked a little bit about talent management definitions. At Totara, we like to think in terms of the talent experience. And what we mean by that is focusing in on that everyday work experience. So what you're doing on a day-to-day basis is typically a mix of executing on particular tasks, but those tasks will involve engaging with others, and those tasks will invariably mean exercising some skills and knowledge that you've acquired. And the access to that learning and skills, or those skills, is you need access to learning opportunities. You need to interact and collaborate with others effectively and engage with people, and you need to be measuring your performance or getting feedback on your performance so that you can improve and guide people around you as well in improving their performance. So that sweet spot, I say sweet spot, it's broadly the everyday experience that we have at work, needs to be more aligned and congruent to meet the challenges that I've just been discussing. So here's my attempt at defining talent experience. You won't find a clear definition really out there just yet, but I think this is something that we are seeing the market in focusing on, whether they call it talent experience or not. But with a new world, you need some new words, I think, to describe it. And so if we were to really hone in on this, you can see that everyday work experience it involves culture, involves processes, involves tools, involves technology, and it is a sophisticated blend of learning, engaging, and collaborating and performing with each other, and to really meet that challenge of siloed functions and siloed thinking and breaking them down, you need to be able to offer that more adaptable, personalized experience that binds those things together. So to achieve, to achieve that, but also what does it look like in practice? Well, perhaps a true talent experience looks like this virtuous circle or cycle here, to actually do your role and job effectively. And I wonder how many of you can actually point to this in your own organizations, that you operate in this way. Can you answer yes to that? I have access to the right resources to do my job. I know exactly where they are. I know how to operate them, and I can get on with it. Yes, I get good feedback that helps me improve my job and my role. And so I'm recognized for it. I also get constructive feedback where required and respond positively to it. Yes, I know what to do. I know that I'm focused on particular goals that are meaningful to the team and to the business that I work for, and that I can operate to them. Yes, I get access to skills opportunities, skills development opportunities. I can improve. I can even get sight of career opportunities for myself inside the organization. So that mobility, that talent mobility is very much present for you. And that, yes, I do feel valued, and I do feel listened to by my manager and the team around me. All of that is really key and critical to being a cohesive team and an effective, high-performing team that works extremely well together. But every member of that team has unique needs. So it's important that each step of the way there's personalized support, and technology plays, I think, an important role in streamlining that and making that efficient to deliver that experience to individuals in a personalized manner. And that's exactly what we've been working on here at Totara to do with our talent experience platform, as we call it. And this platform is completely aligned with what the research is telling us, which is which is that if you want motivated staff, then you really do need to have clarity around purpose. You do need a culture where you've got high levels of autonomy, where people feel psychologically safe to challenge and also get on with achieving their jobs without being told exactly what to do by people upon high, and that there is constant access to continuous improvement of the skills that you have, but also desired skills too, particularly to address the earlier challenges that we talked about, the transition to new skills such as digital skills and other things that are going to be more and more important in the future. Daniel Pink's book Drive, which it's probably about 11 years old now, very much worth picking up again, because he popularized the research that was underlying what motivates people, and used the terms mastery, autonomy, and purpose as a simple way to describe these things. And they align well to the areas of learning, performance, and engagement and collaboration. I'd recommend that you take a fresh look at that to see what that research has been pointing to, because it's only now really becoming more mainstreamly understood, and you're now seeing many organizations taking it much more on board and starting to build these workplace cultures and environments, effectively using technology like ours. An example of how you can put this into practice is to think in terms of action learning and as a way to really get to rapid skills development. And we're going to need to move quickly over the next decade in helping our people acquire fresh skills and new skills. And they're going to need to do that not in isolation, they're going to need to do that together. And when I say together, that probably means virtually together as much, and hybridly together. So you need to have built the right tool sets and ecosystems to facilitate that communication and collaboration, so that it operates in effective ways. And a model that you can adopt, I think, quite readily across your organizations is something called action learning. It essentially means that you're operating in groups focused on tasks, but they are supported tasks, both in terms of access to formal learning and assessing people's competence and certifying that so that they can contribute actively to that set of goals, that it's very much focused on achieving a company performance outcome, and that people are free to support each other at a peer level, that they can contribute and collaborate together very effectively, and supplement the more formal learning support that's there. All of those elements together mean that you can get you should achieve creative, innovative, problem-solving solutions to things far more rapidly and consistently than you would do if you tried to adopt more traditional approaches. So it's not just me really telling you this, it's the whole market, and the market analysts are seeing this shift towards more flexible, adaptable, and integrated HR and learning technology that is designed to simplify our experience at work. And bringing all of these three elements together is a big part of making this effective. Having separate solutions that are perhaps not well integrated or don't act as in unity, then we can find that we are going to really struggle to make that smooth experience for our people. So that's what we've managed to build, the talent experience platform at Totara. It brings those three elements together. You can get sight of this through our Totara community, which Matt might give you more details of at the end of this session. But essentially, it's already in use by a good number of organizations around the world. We have approaching 1,500 organizations using Totara. Here's just a few selection here in terms of people active with our platform, and it's very adaptable. You can brand it to meet more specific needs. Shimano here use it to reach out to all the bike maintainers of their products, and they can certify in multiple languages in multiple regions. Western Union have over 500,000 people completing training, deeply integrated into their EPOS systems, and with a very tailored, simplified interface, as you can see here, which, if we're talking about making the work and the learning, bringing that into the workflow and making it friction free, then this is a good example of that, where it becomes a natural part of staying up to speed with better practices. Another example here from the automotive industry, and just a final one from more consumer brand oriented presentation. So that the reason I've shown you these is because when we talk about an employee experience, it does draw on the consumer experiences that we've become very used to, which are smooth, they are easy to use, and they're attractive, and they're engaging at a visual level as well. So it's really important to know that you've got tools that you can control in that way and really make your own. By doing so, you achieve, I think, much deeper levels of engagement and adoption as a result. So yeah, do take a closer look. We do run regular demos of the platform, and Matt will give some more direction on that at the end. But I just want to finish up this session before we go to questions with a few trends that I think are heading our way for the next year or so. There's 5 of them I'd like to point out to you, and please in the chat do say whether you agree or not with some of these trends. I'm interested in your thoughts on this. So number 1, I've already addressed it slightly, which is there is a talent war already at play. It's only going to get more intense. We're already entering, in many parts of the world, an inflationary sort of period of, the only way to navigate that effectively is to invest well in terms of reskilling and development of your people. You will lose talent to other places, and there is this risk of an aggressive spiral in play. So you want to be the right side of that talent war. Hybrid working is here to stay, so having a flexible working policy that meets the needs of your, the nature of your organization is really critical. Not having that in place will challenge, will put you the wrong side of that talent war. So being able to devise collaborative approaches, both synchronous and asynchronous, and support that with the right type of technology is really crucial to making that work effectively for the longer term. Linked to that is collaborative and community-based learning. What I mean by that is another way of putting that is the action learning model. That does drive far better engagement and goal-oriented action. So getting stuff done that matters to the business and to the team and to the individual, that's the model that will work best. So look for ways in which you can build that type of experience effectively in your organization. And closely linked to that is that the management culture in you needs to really shift quite dramatically in some cases towards one which is not about telling you what to do. It's about working together, mentoring and supporting people to be the best they can be. And that coaching culture is increasingly being proven to be far more effective at getting high performance across the board with large populations of people in organizations. So look carefully at how you can shift to that, and some of that again is embedded in some of the action learning model thinking. And then finally, flexibility and adaptability, that's what will breed sustainability. And what I mean by that is that your business will survive in the face of uncertainty and radical change. There's a great book I could point you to called Exponential. It's written by Azim Azar, and it points to the next period of time, the next 10 years, maybe 15, where we're just seeing exponential change. It's only going to get more rapid. So I guess we've all felt at times that during the pandemic, things shifted by the week, by the day sometimes, in terms of some of the guidance we were getting in some countries. And so that type of dynamic, we'd all probably like to think it would go away, but it's unlikely to. It's something we're going to have to get used to, is that level of sort of chaos, I suppose, but one that you need to try and get more meaning from and be able to navigate effectively. So that mindset, that ways of working, allowing people to be flexible and adaptable, and will breed success for the organization in the longer term. So that brings me to the end of the slides. I hope that's been interesting. Very much like to see if there's been some discussion and questions. Matt, over to you to let me know.
And so during the webinar today, thank you for that. It was very engaging. We were talking about whether or not people feel comfortable and confident in a hybrid working environment. And most people in the chat were saying they feel very comfortable and very happy working from home, and actually a little bit more productive even. And something that comes up quite a lot when I have conversations about this is that change for sort of less experienced staff and their experience of work. I think if you're more experienced in your role, perhaps that move to a hybrid model is quite comfortable. You can pick things up quite quickly. But if you are new to a role, or you're looking to develop as an individual, do you think that change to hybrid is more complicated, and can technology help at all?
It's a good question. We do need to be mindful of people coming into the workplace who are less experienced. At the end of the day, we are social animals, aren't we? We do need to work with others, collaborate with others, be with others. And yeah, technology necessarily plays a role in this going forward. It's important that we find ways to bring people together, both physically and virtually, that are effective, that they are satisfying interactions, if you like. So we all know, back-to-back Zoom calls or team calls, are exhausting and draining and probably not that satisfying. But equally, sitting in meetings in the old days, together, could be even worse, and often was. Not necessarily, neither of those can be very productive. So it's not really about the technology necessarily. It's about the dynamic, and it's about the culture that you have backing that up. And it is partly about how you orient those processes and workflows so that you favor asynchronous communication when people are remote, and you do it in ways where there is permission to communicate in as fluid a way as possible. So when you're onboarding people, bringing people into the organization, that's a critical area where connecting them meaningfully with others is crucial. And I'm sure people have found that is the time where we're really struggling. When the lockdowns say you can't meet, then having to onboard people afresh without that connection has been really difficult with the technology we currently have. So it's not yet fit for purpose. So the promise is there. Technology is becoming much more immersive, and I alluded to the concept of a metaverse earlier on. You've probably seen that in the news. Still early days, but that has a real chance. I mean, it will get to the point where it will feel indistinguishable from what we currently call reality. And actually, funnily enough, this week, a philosopher has popped up who's written a book and basically says it is indistinguishable. Philosophically, reality could be a simulation and vice versa. So we won't get into that debate, but as much as I know Matt would like to, we won't.
I'd love to, but we might not be able to go to bed tonight. So one of the questions here from Jan, she's saying one of the trends that you said was going to be happening was that hybrid working was going to stay. And Jan's saying that one of the things that she noticed that people got used to that flexibility, so being able to work from home, and that some people might react badly to that being taken away and going back to the office. And she thinks it's actually a real need now, as that trend would suggest. Do you think that companies can allow for this hybrid working model and still be productive and still be happy and engaged? Is there a danger actually, in fact, like you say, that talent will leave if it's not offered, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think one of the themes I hope came across is it is about personalization. So you need to provide for individual requirement and need. So if people favor and do their best work remotely predominantly, then why would you get in the way of that? Equally, if people favor, and it's a big part of their role is to be more sociable and around people, then having a place to go, whether it's the current traditional office or places where you can congregate, are meaningful. It's useful and it will be productive and for those people. And in fact, it depends on the job roles, right? Job roles, some job roles are about interacting with others much more than some others. So it isn't one size fits all. It is more complex. But while I say complex, the infrastructure, the technology infrastructure that you put in place doesn't have to feel complex. It just needs to be able to support what I call, it's synchronous, live interaction, as well as asynchronous, non-live, so you can collaborate in both ways. And I think all of us will need to be comfortable with all of those, arguably, but it will be to different extents.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Lars. We haven't got any more questions coming at the moment, but it's a big topic. So, actually, one just popped up. So how effective do you think virtual coaching for a role will be when it's done within the organization in terms of employee growth within the organization? So, yeah, virtual coaching as opposed to face-to-face. Is there a difference there in the modality of coaching?
I'm not sure. I mean, coaching is a form of it's a form of conversation and interaction. So we interact with everyone around us. I think sometimes the concept of coaching gets over formalized, but good coaching can be done remotely, I would say. I think we've probably been more socialized to that, or some people better than others, to reach out to people you haven't met before, have conversations, and actually achieve some quite powerful outcomes as a result. So it's definitely possible. In fact, actually, it's an area, depending on the nature of the coaching, some of that is even being driven using AI. It is rapidly round the corner that you will be able to interact with people, certainly that look and feel as human as I do right now, because I've just noticed that I've been pretty much out of focus for most of this session. But the level of interaction and conversation that you could have with a virtual avatar, literally not even a human, and yet it being a satisfying conversation, is pretty close. So it's a fascinating time. That means that you can get access to good quality, improving quality support, and do that at a very scalable level. And that manifests itself also in terms of job roles. I haven't alluded to it in this session just yet, but till now, but the half-life of a job definition is shrinking. So you may get skilled and good at one type of job, but it's likely to become redundant in the sense of it will change. The nature of the skills you need to achieve those objectives will shift, and a good chunk of it is about the digital impact. So huge numbers of roles will be automated, and yet the human aspect and input into those roles will be much more about working alongside that type of technology and making that technology work better. And And yet, even other job roles that have only existed in the past 5, 6, 7 years, say, like the role of an influencer. I mean, that seems increasingly popular now as a job choice right now. However, as I've already mentioned, there are already synthetic influencers, i.e. they're fully AI driven, visually driven. They look indistinguishable on video to a real person, and they operate and interact in that way. So if you were a brand, would you pay a real life influencer who might do something that you might regret and damage your brand, or would you choose an AI one that you can control fully? You're going to do the latter once it's good enough. And it already is. It's already being used in South Korea. It's already out there. So yeah, very fascinating. You can just see how that type of application just could be repurposed in a workplace way.
Brilliant, thanks, Lars. So we've had lots of questions coming there as well. But I think as it's such a broad topic, this webinar recording will, as I say, be in the Totara community. You can create a free account to the Totara community if you don't already have one, and you'll be able to ask questions in that area. And so we can continue the conversation there as well. And if you do have specific questions around your workplace and how you can ensure the psychological safety and the engagement of all your teams, feel free to post those questions there. I'm sure Lars will have more thoughts as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. It'd be really good to see you all there. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. And hopefully see you all in the Totara community. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.